this thought came to me the other night, last night when I was just kind of speculating about a leak that I think is definitely fake. Um, and it got me to thinking about what Terran Armada could mean. A lot of people speculate that Terran Armada means, we're dealing with an Earth-based faction. Terran, meaning Earth, right? Inhabitant of Earth. I think that's a perfectly fine guess. But when I look up Terran, can I get this bigger? When I look up Terran, it says in science fiction, an inhabitant of planet Earth. That is in science fiction. But and so I think it's fair speculation to think that probably Terran is relating to Earth. People have speculated that it's like an Earth faction, but Terra and Earth also just means ground. Like Terra Incognita is you're in unknown territory, right? Terra is as much about the Earth as Earth itself, like dirt. Territory. Where's the etymology of Terra? Land, right? So Terra can just mean land or territory. And it's, Latin for Earth. But I don't necessarily think that this has to be on Earth. I think there's a relatively good chance when you pair Terran with Armada. Let's look into Armada. A fleet of warships, gunboats, minesweepers, whatever. I don't think we're getting boats. Armada is like a fleet, right? But to me, an armada. Well, what's the to arm? An armada is like a fleet, but if we're thinking of this as a ground fleet, which is kind of how I'm reading it in my crazy speculative take on it, I do think this could be related to mech gameplay. And I was thinking about it. It's probably a stretch. Like, I don't necessarily think that mechs are coming to the game, and I'll talk about why. But if it did, it would be a huge update, and after all this time, I think that's what they need, is like a huge update to bring people back into the fold. And I think if you brought out mech gameplay, and not only the ability to pilot a mech, but the ability to build a mech, that would, I think, take the game into a really cool new territory. Like, the combat in the game is fun, but there's not like a lot of true boss fights. Like once you get to level 80 or 100 or 200, there's not a ton in the combat to stress you, other than when you're like fighting a Starborn, and they're using like the powers and whatnot. But if and the Terramorphs aren't that powerful, honestly. Once again, I have a clip where I have like all the unarmed perks, and I have this clip, and I'll try to find it, where I go up to a Terramorph and I uppercut it, and it goes flying through the air, and it's hilarious. And that's kind of, once you get to a high level in Starfield, the combat can become kind of, it's no sweat. But if you bring out mechs as an enemy, suddenly, you're traveling on a planet, and, say you're like a wanted pirate or something, and all of a sudden somebody in a mech lands on the planet and you're out, you know, just kind of scanning stuff, and suddenly it's like a dragon attack. It would be, I think, a lot like a dragon attack to try to fight a mech. The reason why I don't anticipate this to happen is because it would involve so much work from Bethesda. Because I think to make mech gameplay fun, you know, it has to pass like the eye test on screen. If I'm on foot and I'm fighting a mech, I would think I'd have to try and, like, you know, cripple a leg, and I would want to see damage happening to the armor over time. And that's not really, we haven't really gotten that in combat, even against aliens or humans. There's no sense of like wear and tear, even in the ships. Like, you see that the health bar is knocked offline for like engines, but you don't see visible damage to the engines. And I think in a mech you would want to see like destructible environments. You know, if you're taking on an outpost, you would want to be able to shoot a hole in the wall, and that's definitely not something that I think they can do in the creation engine. So I don't know. I think potentially they could bring in mechs as like a boss fight. I don't know if it would show up as procedural content, and I don't know that it would change so much of the base game, I think, to let you have one, especially because to be aligned with like the UC or the Freestar Collective, you would have to not pilot a mech. Like, it would change. You would basically become an outlaw, and the game is like, in the lore they were like, hey, we cut mechs from the game and instead rolled it into the lore that you can't pilot one. I don't know. I feel like the game could use a shot in the arm like that with mech gameplay, but we'll see. But that's one direction I think this Terran Armada update could go, is, you know, maybe it's just one big fight against a rogue mech pilot. You know, there's a listing I talked about. There's a listing of like associates of the Vulture, or like operators. I think operators was the term they used, and they gave tier lists. So it was like, and one of the S tier operatives was a mech pilot. And to me, that would be like, you know, a Trackers Alliance quest, S tier boss fight against a guy who has been terrorizing people in a mech suit. I just don't know. I find it kind of hard to believe that they would bring that into the game, but I don't know. It's been a long time. They're a talented studio. They've had a lot of time to work on something, and we know they've been working on something other than, you know, just full steam ahead on Elder Scrolls. So anyway, I think that'd be cool, and I don't have anything else to add, so I'm gonna whoops